So there's a guy named Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. He was a psychologist for the U.S. Army. He retired, but he wrote a couple books on basically combat and on killing. And he studied, among other topics, how do you get someone to kill someone else? Or what goes through your brain when you're in combat? So these are some questions he tried to answer. One of the things he found is that he found a statistic. He said after the D-Day invasion and fighting in Normandy and western and northern France between Allied powers, so we're talking about Brits, Canadians, Americans, Aussies, whatever, fighting against the Nazi Germany's soldiers. And so he found that people, after 60 days of sustained combat operations, 98% of them were what we call psychological casualties. They're crazy. They're going nuts. The traumatic toll on their mind was killing them. Was making them all weird. Was making them so they couldn't function normally anymore. And he says, okay, all right, we got the statistic. 98% were psychological casualties after 60 days of sustained combat. Got it. Sounds about right. Horrors of combat, terrible, terrible things. I've seen them firsthand myself, some of them. And so the question is not about the 98% of people that went crazy. The question is the 2% of people who did not go crazy. What's their story? And he breaks this down into three classifications of people. He calls them the wolf, the sheep, and the sheepdog. He says the wolf is violent by nature, loves the carnage, lives for it, is happy in battle, is happy in the chaos of war, and can fully exert himself, can fully express himself in the chaos of war, in the violence of war. And so he doesn't go crazy because he's actually quite at home. And the 98% of the population who are the sheep, they're not made for violence, they're not programmed for violence, they're not built for violence. They can do it if you force them and you give them no choice, and if you have to, then fine. But they will eventually break down because they're not built for this. They're psychologically not programmed for this type of violence. And so the other 1% of population are the sheepdog. And he says the sheepdog and the wolf are very, very similar. Physically, almost the same, right? Think about a dog and a wolf. Their physical attributes are the same to the extent that they're just genetically cross-compatible. The dogs are wolves. I don't know if you guys know that or not, but dogs are wolves. They're just genetically inbred, but basically they're genetically wolves. So there's nothing that actually physically separates the sheepdog from the wolf other than his loyalty, right? And in this model, this is not a reflection on reality, just to be clear. Just so you know, I had a companion wolf for like 16 years. I know a lot about wolves. I spent a lot of time with a wolf. I know a lot about wolf psychology and behavior. So this isn't exactly reality, but it's a model, okay? It's just a fairy tale and allows us to understand the world. That in this model, 1%, the wolf, is just the violent, evil creature who's looking to do violence and relishes and is happy in the gore and the chaos and the violence. And the 1% who's the sheepdog is willing and able to do violence, is fully capable of violence, but he's not looking to do violence for violence's sake itself. He's looking to do violence only if it is necessary in defending what is good, what is just, what is righteous, and what is fair, what is the rule of law, and what is innocent. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so the sheepdog has his heart in defending the flock of sheep. The wolf has his heart in killing and violence and preying upon the flock of sheep. And that is the only difference. But physically, they're both capable of doing violence, and they're both totally natural and at peace in doing violence. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So this is a model. This is not a perfect representation for reality, but what it does is it gives you a choice. Now you can think about this. This is an old and simple model, but you can think about this. Do I want to be wolf? Am I wolf? Do I want to be sheep? Am I sheep? Do I want to be sheepdog? Am I sheepdog? Do I have what it takes to be sheepdog? Of course, in this model, we aspire to be sheepdog for people like us and who come and learn these types of things and consider ourselves willing and able to do violence on others. We ask ourselves, am I actually a sheepdog? Do I have what it takes? That means putting yourself in front and in harm's way in order to protect others behind you, even if you don't necessarily know them, even if you don't necessarily like them, even if they can be selfish scumbags who don't necessarily deserve to be saved. I want you to think about that. You might come to the realization, hey, I'm just interested in protecting myself. I'm just interested in protecting my immediate family, my children, my wife. I'm a sheep. I'm okay with that in this model. I'm not going to go out there. I'm not going to be out there playing hero. I'm not going to go volunteer in Ukraine. I ain't mobilized, for fighting terrorists in Israel. Like, I'm just looking to just focus on my little bubble. That is okay, and there's nothing wrong about that. Comments, questions?